You're watching the Manny Fraser Show, where men over 40 learn how to lose fat, build muscle, and dominate life without wasting time on BS. Oh, well, this is my 40th birthday, and definitely, I always say that I think in decades, not years. Okay, so right now this is the fourth decade, beginning of the fourth decade that I've been on this world, and I think about it in decades because it's when you start thinking in decades, you think about what is it that you want to accomplish within the decade that you're in, right? So like you're from 0 to 10, nothing really happens. Like not nothing really happens, things happen, but like nothing in your life. There's a lot of developmental stuff, a lot of foundational stuff, but I'd say that from 0 to 10, it's on your parents to kind of prepare you for a lot of different traits and personalities that you're going to have. And I'd say from me, from 0 to 10, the traits and personalities that I got, they're still there, right? Like a rather easygoing attitude, a really optimistic, highly agreeable, and a person that can really just be like, hey, this is what I do. I know for me, one of the things that I've always wanted to make sure is that I say what I mean and I mean what I say, and it's very clear what I'm saying. And I'm always working on that communication part, right? Very big. So from 0 to 10, that's where those traits come in. That's where you get taught those types of things. Now, what happens from 10 to 20 is those traits are reinforced, and there are some added traits that come in from outside influences, such as, because you start hanging out with friends. And so it's not just your family that's influencing you, it's your friends that are influencing you. So your high school friends, teammates from different sports teams and whatnot, you end up getting influenced and you end up learning more. And I'd say from 10 to 20 for me, the influence for me mainly was like learning how to hustle, learning how to work, learning that hard work is okay. I've worked in factories, I've worked handing out flyers, I've worked door to door, I've worked phone sales, I've worked retail sales. I worked everything between 10 and 20. I picked up boxes, so like let's say garbage man, but it's not a garbage man, it's a person that does recycling. So that's what I learned from 10 to 20. Now 20 to 30 is a really interesting year for a lot of people, because 20 to 30 is the coming of age story generally is between 10 and 20, but realistically, whenever you see a coming of age story in the movies, it's generally when you stop being a child, right? And I'd say for me, when I stopped being a child was when my parents got divorced. And I was living with my mom, and it was me and my mom, and my sister was with my dad. And I remember that we had nothing in the fridge. I was very hungry, and there was Toonie Tuesday, and I look forward to Toonie Tuesday. God bless KFC. That's what I'm just saying. And the reason I say God bless KFC because when it was Toonie Tuesday, that was literally my dinner. And I remember my mom would ask, and she would ask me like, can I have some? And I'm like, I could have bought you one, right? And like at the time, the money was tight and it was stretched very thin. I remember that. And in those formative years, I remember at the time my dad took me to work, I was about 12, and he paid me money, and I remember just giving it all to my mom for whatever, from rent to help buy a car. And it was very interesting because that made me realize that coming of age, it's all of a sudden now life is getting real, right? And that's generally how I view that coming of age. So like when you go from 10 to 20 and then 20 to 30, I would say is more reality on you. And the more reality on you is realizing that the decisions that you make have long-term consequences. And so for me, between 20 and 30, that's when I went into prison. So right in the middle of my 20s and got out before I was 30. So I started my 20s out, I ended my 20s out, but in the middle of my 20s, I was incarcerated. 4.5 years. And I remember one of the biggest things I learned during that time was the decisions that I make have long-term effects, and I need to be very wise with the decisions I make. Also, the other thing I learned was that it doesn't matter how far I drop, doesn't matter how far I go down, doesn't matter how far things get, I can always return. You can always come back. You can always work. You can always do something. The world is not against you. It's you that's actually against you. there were people that were in the same position as me who are still incarcerated, who are still going back in, who are still not changing and not realizing that the long-term effects of the decisions that they make today will have implications tomorrow. So for me, I realized that because a lot of the things that I did was in my early 20s, and then by the time I was in my mid 20s, I was now dealing with the repercussions of my decisions in my early 20s. So fast forward, and then I get out, and now I'm entering my 30s. And 30 to 40, I'd say that decade taught me that, that decade started off with a financial high. I mean, I got into Bitcoin the beginning of the decade, and there was COVID in the middle of that decade, and now we're here. And I'd say that decade taught me that, if 20 to 30 taught me that no matter how low I dropped, I can push back, 30 to 40 taught me perseverance. Because it's one thing to say, I'm going to work hard and I'm going to push and I'm going to do everything. It's another thing to actually do it. And so for a lot of people, they have trouble following through. And I see this a lot in the gyms. I see this a lot in life. When people make promises, when people say they're going to do something, they have trouble. And I have trouble doing it too. Like, I'm going to be completely honest. There's times where I'm like, I'm going to do this and I don't follow through. Following through is a skill. And I'd say on a daily basis, you need to learn how to do that skill. And if you don't learn how to do that skill, it's going to be very difficult for you to get through in life, and for people to trust you. Because people aren't going to trust you because you don't follow through. You're not a person of your word, right? I remember when I was growing up and I was going to clubs, and you had a friend that would always come out, and you had a friend who would tell you, like, I can't make it. And then you call him like a flop. Like, oh, it's just a flop, right? Now think about it from a point of view that, like, just saying that would make that person want to show up, right? One, like, you're trying to peer pressure them, like, you don't want to be considered known as a flop. But the reality is that, who cares what you think about me? Who cares what you think and how you feel about me? And the reason why I can't care about it is because I can't control that. I can't control how you think and feel about me. I can't control how you envision me. What I can control is my actions on a daily basis. And my actions on a daily basis will equal to some sort of thought that you will have. Now, there are times where your thoughts are going to be great about me, and there's times your thoughts aren't going to be good about me. I'm not perfect. No man is. And the next thing that I learned between 30 and 40 is no man is perfect. There's no one that's perfect. You will always make mistakes. And at that point, it's really easy, and the easiest thing to do for us as humans is to have grace. And what I mean by having grace, what I really mean is that when someone does something to you, right? Understand that everyone is living through a human experience. So when someone does something to you, is this thing going to affect you in 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now? If the answer is no, and you still have your life, then keep moving forward. Now, you can be like, oh, well, it can be atrocious that this person did something really bad to you, right? Whatever it is. And once again, once that moment in time is over, what do? Forgiveness is for you, not for them, right? Grace is for you, not for them. Because carrying the burden of disliking someone is more of a burden than liking somebody. It's more of a burden than just realistically caring about the fact that they're existing, and that's it. But I'm not going to put more care into the world. And what I mean by that is that I love my family. I love my kids. And this morning, they wished me a happy birthday. And for some reason, I think this is probably one of the first times that this happened for me during my birthday, was I just had tears of joy in my eye, because I felt so much love for my family. And that made me realize something, that this is realistically this is what I have. I've built this tribe of people that love me unconditionally, and I love them unconditionally, and I'm willing to fight for them. I'm willing to do everything for them, right? Doesn't matter, because they're part of me. And those people that are part of me love me. And I mean, that's something that, going into my 40s and in this decade, I want to lead with love. I think that's a big thing that I'm probably getting up learning, is like leading with love. Leading with love is like focusing on how I can show people that they matter, how I can show people that they care, that I care, but still hold on to myself. Because one thing that I'd say learning from prison is that you learn how to hold everything in. You'll learn how to deal with a lot of stuff. I'm gonna tell you the honest truth. And the way I deal with it is that at the end of the day, like death, you deal with it, because there might be a time where someone's gonna die and you won't be able to be there. So I had to live out my dad's funeral, my mom's funeral, my grandma's funeral, sister, everyone I cared about, all their funerals. I had that thought in my head, like, if they die right now, I'm not gonna make it. Like, I won't be able to see it. So I shed tears for all that, because of the fact that I got rid of that. Now, even when my dad died, I cried, and I remember that day, and I'm gonna talk about that day, and kind of go leading into where I'm going in my 40s and where I think that most people will end up going in their 40s or learning in their 40s. When my dad died, I remember I was at work and I got a call, and the call was from my sister. Actually, no, the call was from my wife. And my sister had called my wife and let her know that my dad had passed. And I took the call from my wife, and she said, your dad passed away. And I remember I was in the middle of a meeting with one of my trainers and my regional manager. I'm sitting there. I take the call. I compose myself, take a deep breath, and walk in. And I go back into the meeting, and I'm just like, I got to make it through this day. Like that's all I had to think. I just got to make it through this day. I just got to make it through this day. And I remember making it through the day, just kind of holding it all in. Right? Nothing's being said that's going to trigger that. I get home and tears just go down my eyes. And the reason why tears go down my eyes is because that's my dad. And rather, even though it wasn't the best relationship, I can say, like, I'm trying to make the best relationship with my son to the point where when I do pass, that my son is like, that was my best friend. Not that that's just my dad, but that was my dad. That was a guy that had redemption, that no longer has redemption, that no longer can no longer do anything to help. He won't be able to see grandkids. He won't be able to see the ending. My grandkids won't be able to see him. My kids won't be able to see him any further. He can't pass on any wisdom, and that sucks. That sucks. But something I realized is that I want to make sure that I secure my future with my legacy. And that's something that my dad did not do. And I think about that. When did that start? Like I said, my parents were getting in and out of relationship. And then in my formative years, let's say between my 10 to 20 years, they got back together. And then by the time I was 20, they were split up. And we had a whole bunch of things happen. We had a foreclosure on our house. Me and my mom and my sister were homeless. My dad was homeless. He decided to, instead of going, like, helping us, he was like, I'm just going to go spend time at my business. And I understand it now, but I also think about it from that point of view of like, well, like there's so many things he could have did and pivoted in his life that he didn't because he was stubborn, and that's okay. You have to be stubborn. I understand you have to be stubborn when you're chasing after a goal, but there's also a thing of sacrifice. And the sacrifice is when you have to sacrifice your family for the betterment of your family. You're pushing forward because your goal that you have, while it's an important goal, at some point you have to realize that if this goal doesn't happen, how am I setting up my kids? How am I setting up my wife? How am I setting up my life for old age? And I don't know. That wasn't something that my dad really thought about. So I think about that now, and that's going back into leading with love. Leading with love to me is thinking about where do I want to be in the future? How do I want people to talk about me when I'm gone? Right? How do I want people to remember me? Do I want people to remember me as a person that was helpful? Do I want people to remember me as a person that cared? Do I want people to remember me as a person that got things done? I want all the above. I want my kids to remember me as like that dad that like had fun, that told dad jokes, that was disciplined, but knew how to have fun. And so for my 40th birthday, that's my thoughts. That's what I think about going into 40 to 50. What I see myself doing, what I see happening in this time frame is just an all-out like, learning to love, learning to be with myself, learning to be with my family, learning to enjoy the company of others and be able to help people, being able to open doors for people. This is all important now when you're in this point of life. That's my rant. We're at work now. But I woke up this morning realizing that 40 is gonna be fun. I am working on a TEDx. I'm working on getting on a TEDx stage. I'm working on a conference I'm trying to set up. And this is just the beginning of the decade. I'm excited for the end of the decade, and I'm going to say it what it's going to look like. I'm going to be traveling around the world, talking and speaking. I'm going to be hosting conferences and at conferences, and I'm going to be a paid speaker by the end of this decade. Because in thinking in decades and not years, how do you set yourself up? I already moved the chess piece in my 30s. I started taking speaking classes. I started working on my public speaking. I started working on my communication because I know that this is something that I want. But also on top of that, I know that I want to help people. In order to help people in a bigger masses, this is what it's going to do. My mouth, how I communicate, how I move people forward. Anyways, that's it. Those are my thoughts for my 40th birthday. Hopefully you got something out of it. Definitely, it's surreal, man. It is surreal. I tell you, it's surreal. Because it's one of those things where you get to it and you're like, wow, 4 decades, right? Here's another thing for health, and I'm going to end off with this, is that most men will end up passing by the time that they are, there's an ant on me. By the time that they are 70. My dad died at 70. Comorbidities are high. Take care of yourself. Health is wealth. Because you want to live long, healthy, and pain-free, and just like be there. You're going to want to actually start taking care of yourself. You're going to want to deposit into that bank account, that health bank account. It's another video I'll talk about the health bank account. There are 5 things in the health bank account. Preview. 5 things in the health bank account. Air, water, exercise, micronutrients, macronutrients. We'll talk about it next time. All right, that's my rant. Peace. If this hit you hard like it should, hit subscribe, drop a comment, and watch the next video. Don't just get fit, get powerful.